Hi everyone and welcome to the School of Port. Today we are at a very special location, the Factory House.
What is the Factory House?
The Factory House is the house of the British port wine shippers. It was a house that was built in 1790, and the project was launched by the consul we had here at the time. His name was Mr. John Whitehead. He was consul here for 47 years, which was a long time. They decided to build the factory house, and as with everything, they had to find a way of financing this. And so the members created a fund called the Contribution Fund, which basically meant that each time one of the members exported, a tax was applied to the value of the shipment. That tax came into the Contribution Fund, and the Contribution Fund built the house, furnished it, looked after Mr. Whitehead, because at the time Mr. Whitehead actually lived here. And also looked after our priest, because our priest, being the priest of a non-Catholic church, therefore the Church of England, we weren't allowed to have our own church until 1815. So before that, the priest lived here, and the Sunday service was held in the ballroom upstairs, which I will show you as we go up.
Would you like to show us around?
Of course, come this way. Let's start by going upstairs.
Thank you.
And here we are in the reading room. We have a model of our house here, which it would seem coincides with the date of the building of the house. We had a specialist on John Carr buildings out here a few years ago, and he measured our house and he measured the model, and it seems that the scale is 1:16, which coincides with the date of the building of the house. So we can safely say that this was actually the architect's model. Now we also have a newspaper which is called the Daily Universal Register, which was founded in 1785. In 1788 it changed its name, it became the Times. And we have the Times going back to number 1. And one of the many traditions in this house is that every Wednesday lunch we go and fetch the newspaper of that day of 100 years ago. And we put it in the drawing room for the members to read. It's a way of showing our newspaper, and it's very interesting, the kind of information and news that we come across of what happened 100 years before. And this is the main part of our library. We have 20,000 books in here. This used to be a very regular lending library when the community, the port community, was large and the families would come and collect books and take them home to read. Nowadays that's not the case, but we do keep the books that we have. We no longer collect books. The only section that we are updating regularly is the port wine section. So whenever one of our member houses publishes a new book, we ask them for a copy. Apart from that, what we do is just keep the books in good condition, and we restore X number of books every year just to keep everything in good order. So we have 14,000 bottles of the many, many different years. And when do we serve this? We serve this at every Wednesday lunch, and it's one of the honours that the treasurer of each year has, which is to choose the vintage port he will serve at each Wednesday lunch. So this is the part of the cellar, or the first part of the cellar, from which the treasurer can choose the vintage port that he wants to serve at the Wednesday lunches. And there are two different types of contributions, as I explained to you before. So every time we welcome a new member to the house, instead of paying a fee, they have to give the house 12 dozen bottles of vintage port. So we will create a bin to store the vintage port that that person has given, and we will put in a label like you will see here. When Paul Symington joined the factory house, he gave his 12 dozens of Dow's 1977. On the other hand, you will see, for instance, in this case, when Taylor declared that 1980 was a vintage year, they also gave the factory house 12 dozen bottles. And so we just put in a label in which we have just the name of the house and the year it refers to. You will wonder that 12 dozen bottles don't fit in here. Well, they don't, and you're absolutely right. But it just happens that it's all been drunk already. So we now put it into a smaller bin.